Thank you for watching the video. This is YouTube Medical University. Have you ever heard that drinking milk can cause diarrhea and even lead to cancer? Milk is a very common drink for Japanese people, as it has been served since elementary school. However, there are many things being said about milk on the internet and social media. To begin with, it's strange for humans to drink cow's milk. Also, humans are about the only ones who continue to drink milk even after becoming adults. Certainly, when you put it that way, milk is originally a drink optimized for mother cows to raise their calves. Isn't there a risk to the human body from consuming such milk? Is the nutritional balance really suitable for humans? Some people might feel uneasy when they hear things like this. On the other hand, it's also said that milk is rich in calcium and protein, so we should drink it for our health. So this time I will briefly explain the advantages and disadvantages of drinking milk, showing data from a doctor's perspective. So in the first section I'll talk about the risks of diarrhea and anemia from drinking milk. In the second section I'll discuss how drinking milk can increase the risk of a certain type of cancer. And finally, in the third section I'll share my opinion as a doctor on whether I can recommend milk, and if so, what the appropriate amount to drink is. I'll also mention the specific recommended amount at the end of the video, so please watch until the end. Here at YouTube Medical University, we share easy to understand and enjoyable videos that can help you become healthier starting tomorrow, so please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Now let's start with the first section. I'll talk about the risks of diarrhea and anemia from drinking milk. Drinking too much milk can cause stomach pain or diarrhea. Do you know anyone like that? That could possibly be lactose intolerance. It's said that many Japanese people have this lactose intolerance. Milk is optimized for raising calves. Milk contains a type of sugar called lactose. Of course, this lactose, cows can digest it, and it's said that many white people can also digest it. However, for people of Asian descent, it's said that many do not have the digestive enzyme called lactase, which breaks down lactose. As children, we have this lactase, but as Asians grow into adults, it's said that 95 to 100% experience a decrease in the amount of lactase. When the amount of lactase decreases, if you drink a lot of milk, the lactose isn't broken down and can't be absorbed by the body. If it's not digested and absorbed, the lactose in the milk you drank passes through the small intestine. And when there are substances that aren't digested or absorbed due to osmotic pressure, water is drawn from deep within the walls of the small intestine into the intestine itself, eventually causing the stool to become soft or even leading to diarrhea if there's too much water. That's the kind of risk involved. And when this lactose reaches the large intestine, it reacts with the gut bacteria and ferments, producing gas, which can make your stomach bloated or cause abdominal pain. Some people experience those kinds of symptoms. In fact, a survey of 10,000 Japanese men and women over the age of 15 found that 1 in 3 people reported experiencing some symptoms, such as occasional stomach pain or diarrhea after drinking milk. When we are newborns, we drink breast milk. Most of us are able to digest and absorb milk, but as we grow into adulthood, our bodies gradually lose the ability to digest milk. However, only 4.5% of people said they always had symptoms, so it's not necessary to completely avoid drinking milk. I think the smart choice is to adjust the amount of milk you drink according to your own symptoms. And in another study, it was found that most people with lactose intolerance had no symptoms or only mild symptoms when they consumed about 1 cup or 240 ml of milk. Also, some people said that they had symptoms with cold milk but were fine with hot milk, or that they didn't have symptoms if they drank milk in smaller amounts several times throughout the day. The enzyme called lactase, which breaks down lactose, is usually decreased rather than completely absent in most people, so drinking about 1 cup of milk rarely causes symptoms. Now let's talk about the relationship between milk and anemia. Have you ever heard that drinking milk can cause anemia? In fact, the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare has issued a statement saying that children under 1 year old should not be given milk. This is also mentioned in the 2019 edition of the Breastfeeding and Weaning Support Guide. Actually, compared to breast milk, cow's milk contains 3 times as much protein and also 3 times as many minerals as breast milk. It is said that for babies under 1 year old whose internal organs are still immature, these are too concentrated. Since cow's milk is ideal for calves, which are already fairly large at birth and grow rapidly, I think it's reasonable to understand that it's a bit too concentrated for human babies. Also, because cow's milk contains a lot of calcium and phosphorus, it can sometimes inhibit the absorption of iron. And if a baby keeps drinking only cow's milk instead of breast milk, there's a possibility of iron deficiency and anemia. It's considered best not to give cow's milk to babies under 1 year old. For these reasons, it seems that many people believe drinking cow's milk can cause anemia. It's true that a nutrient in cow's milk called casein reacts with stomach acid and turns into a white, thick curd in the stomach. Have you ever poured lemon juice into milk? When you do that, the milk starts to curdle. That same reaction happens in your stomach. Some people say that this curd protects the lining of the stomach, but there are also papers suggesting it might interfere with nutrient absorption. Because of this, many people worry that drinking milk could cause anemia. It's true that if you lived only on milk, like a calf, your iron levels could drop and you might develop anemia. So some people think milk is a complete food and say, I'll just live by drinking only milk every day. That kind of thinking might be a bit extreme. However, people who have a normal diet and eat a variety of foods are getting iron from various foods, so there are no reports that drinking milk causes anemia. I think avoiding milk just to prevent anemia is clearly worrying too much. This is just one example, but the world-class player Otani also drank 1 liter of milk a day. It's also said that the amount of milk people can drink varies from person to person, and I think it's unlikely that drinking milk will definitely cause anemia. So let's review the first lesson. Drinking milk can cause diarrhea and stomach pain. This is called lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance occurs because the digestive enzyme that breaks down lactose in milk decreases, especially in Asians, as they become adults. About 1 in 3 people may occasionally experience symptoms when drinking milk. On the other hand, if it's just about 1 cup a day, or if the milk is warm, or if you divide it into several small portions throughout the day, you may not have any symptoms. I explained that there are many people who can drink milk. Regarding the theory that drinking milk might cause anemia, I explained that if you try to live only on milk, there is a possibility of developing anemia, but if you have a normal diet, the chances of getting anemia from drinking milk are low. Now in the second period, I'll explain whether drinking milk might increase the risk of a certain type of cancer. In the past, it was thought that milk might increase the risk of breast cancer. There were books and people who shared such experiences, which led to a rapid increase in research on the relationship between milk and cancer. So how far has research on milk and cancer progressed at this point? Does drinking milk really increase the risk of cancer? I will explain this in an easy to understand way. When it comes to the relationship between milk and cancer, the one we need to pay attention to is prostate cancer. The prostate is an organ unique to men. In fact, there has been a lot of research on milk and prostate cancer in Western countries. These studies suggest that consuming calcium may increase the risk of prostate cancer. In a 2007 report by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research, they concluded that calcium increases the risk of prostate cancer. Even if that's the case in Western countries, what about Japanese people? If you thought that, you're sharp. This is a study conducted in Japan, Iwate. People living in the jurisdictions of public health centers in 10 locations across Japan, such as Akita, Okinawa, and Osaka. In a Japanese study targeting men aged 45 to 74, those who consumed the most dairy products such as milk, cheese, and yogurt, it was reported that this group had a risk that was 1.5 to 1.6 times as high of prostate cancer compared to the group that consumed the least. From studies like this, it is suggested that calcium intake and dairy product consumption may increase the risk of prostate cancer. This possibility cannot be denied. However, the National Cancer Center describes it as follows. Milk may help prevent osteoporosis. because it may also help prevent diseases such as high blood pressure and colon cancer. Therefore, whether or not you should avoid milk requires a comprehensive assessment, and it is stated that a definite conclusion cannot be made at this time. So, in order to make a comprehensive assessment, I also looked into the risk of milk and other types of cancer. First, let's talk about the risk of milk and breast cancer. In a prospective cohort study involving more than 88,000 women, those who consumed low-fat dairy products had a 32% lower risk of breast cancer. In addition, those who took vitamin D had a 28% lower risk of breast cancer. So when it comes to premenopausal women, it has been reported that consuming dairy products and vitamin D may lower the risk of cancer. And as for postmenopausal women, the conclusion was that whether or not they consumed dairy products, there was no significant change in the risk of breast cancer. And on the contrary, it was found that consuming dairy products actually increased the risk of breast cancer. There have been similar reports, making judgment difficult. However, on these issues, a certain conclusion has been reached, and in 2011 there was a report that analyzed 18 studies on dairy products and breast cancer. This is called a meta-analysis, and as a result of this meta-analysis, it was concluded that dairy products neither increased nor decreased the risk of breast cancer. In fact, although there was no statistically significant difference, the research results tended to lean toward reducing the risk of breast cancer. However, there are also voices saying things like this. Certainly that may be the case worldwide, but when it comes to Japanese people who have a weaker ability to digest milk, isn't there a possibility that the risk of breast cancer could increase? I think that's a sharp perspective. Let's take a look at research from Japan. This is a paper published in the journal Breast Cancer in 2017. It targeted 23,000 Japanese women and studied how diet patterns relate to breast cancer rates. One group consumed many vegetables, a group that ate a lot of animal-based foods, and a group that consumed a lot of dairy products. When these groups were compared, there was no increase in breast cancer cases among the group that consumed a lot of dairy products. Based on these findings, saying that drinking milk causes breast cancer is clearly an exaggeration, and completely avoiding milk just to prevent breast cancer might be being overly cautious. Next, let's talk about the risk of pancreatic cancer linked to milk. This is a paper published in the British Journal of Nutrition. It's a study involving about 60,000 Japanese people. They compared the risk of pancreatic cancer between people who consume milk, cheese, and yogurt. There was no significant difference between the group that consumed the most milk and the group that consumed the least. I think we've gained a good understanding of the relationship between milk and cancer. However, since milk is quite high in calories and fat, isn't it possible that drinking too much could lead to arteriosclerosis and increase the risk of death? I think there are people who are concerned about that. There is a study involving 90,000 Japanese people. It's a study that compares the amount of dairy product consumption with mortality rates from various diseases. Men who consume a lot of milk and cheese have a lower risk of death from all causes, as well as from vascular blockages. There are results showing that the risk of death decreased. On the other hand, for women, there haven't been any reports showing a particular decrease in this risk. This has gotten a bit long, so let's review the second period. Consuming calcium and dairy products may increase the risk of prostate cancer. However, on the other hand, they may help lower the risk of osteoporosis, high blood pressure, and breast cancer in premenopausal women. And for postmenopausal women as well, it does not increase the risk of breast cancer, and there are no reports that it increases the risk of pancreatic cancer either. In fact, for men, there are even reports that overall mortality, especially deaths caused by heart blockage, has decreased. To summarize, while it's true that the risk of prostate cancer in men may not be negligible, there may be benefits that outweigh that risk. For those who think that way, I believe it's perfectly reasonable to feel comfortable consuming milk. Regarding the risk of prostate cancer, factors such as having an enlarged prostate or a family history are involved, so if you want to learn more in detail, please watch the video on prostate cancer that I uploaded previously. If you're really unsure about whether to drink milk or not, why not consult your doctor? Finally, should you drink milk in moderation, and if so, how much is appropriate? I'd like to share my opinion as a doctor. To summarize the first and second points, it's true that some people may experience stomach pain or diarrhea from drinking milk. Those people should be careful not to drink too much milk. However, it is said that most people do not experience symptoms if they drink about 240 ml. And unless you try to live only on milk, it's unlikely that you'll become anemic from drinking milk. And for all cancers other than prostate cancer, it has been found to either lower the risk or not significantly change the risk. As for the group that consumes the most milk, just as a rough estimate, when it comes to milk, they consume about 300 grams of milk, 6 grams of cheese and 30 grams of yogurt. So if you exceed these amounts, you might be consuming too much milk. Especially for men, I think it's best to limit milk intake to about 1 glass per day. As for women, there is currently no conclusion that milk significantly increases the risk of any specific cancer, so I think it's best to consume it according to your own health condition. というのがよろしいのではないかなと。How was it? This time I explained the relationship between milk and diseases in an easy to understand way from a doctor's perspective. I drink about this much milk. This is how I eat dairy products. My doctor told me this. If you have any similar experiences, please let me know in the comments. And whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if you could rate this video, it will help me with future videos. Also, so you don't miss any new videos, subscribing to my channel would really encourage me. Taking it together with milk can reduce the risk of fractures and help with muscle mass maintenance. I've also posted videos about vitamin D, which is said to have these effects, so please check them out from the description if you're interested. Well then, see you in the next video. My very first book is coming out. As a general practitioner, I've learned from my patients about how to live without aging after turning 70. I want to live like this too. I never knew there were such health methods. Thanks to the many patients I've met so far, I've gained a lot of insights. This book is packed with wisdom for living a healthy and happy life. Pre-orders are now available on Amazon. There are special pre-order bonuses, so if you're interested, please check the description. The book will be available in bookstores nationwide starting January 18th. I'd be very happy if you could check it out.